हेलो दोस्तों, आदाब, सत श्री अकाल, नमस्कार एंड गुड इवनिंग। आपके बीच में आपका डॉक्टर प्रमोद शर्मा एक बार फिर फार्माकोकाइनेटिक की क्लासेस लेने के लिए उपस्थित हूँ और आज मैं आपको पढ़ाऊँगा फार्माकोकाइनेटिक्स में एक नया टॉपिक जिसे कहते हैं एक्सक्रीशन। अब तक हमने फार्माकोकाइनेटिक्स में डिस्कस किया जो जैसे कि एब्जॉर्प्शन फॉलोड बाय डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन, फिर मेटाबॉलिज्म की हमने 2 क्लासेस ली क्योंकि वो टॉपिक ज़रा बड़ा था। और आज मैं आपको बताने जा रहा हूँ एक्सक्रीशन के बारे में। मुझे उम्मीद है और पूरा भरोसा भी है कि आपको मेरी क्लासेस पसंद आ रही होंगी और आप जनरल फार्माकोलॉजी ख़ास तौर से फार्माकोकाइनेटिक्स सीख रहे होंगे। ये विषय थोड़ा सा कठिन ज़रूर है, लेकिन ऐसा नहीं कि इसे नहीं सीखा जा सकता और मेरी कोशिश यही रहेगी कि आपको इस डिफरेंट फार्माकोकाइनेटिक टॉपिक्स को जितने भी सरल भाषा में और सरल कॉन्सेप्ट्स के साथ समझा सकूं। यही मेरी कोशिश रहेगी और उम्मीद करता हूं कि आपको इसका भरपूर फ़ायदा मिलेगा। तो लीजिए शुरुआत करते हैं आज नए टॉपिक के साथ, दैट इज़ एक्सक्रीशन। अगर हम एक्सक्रीशन को डिफ़ाइन करें तो इसकी एक सिंपल डेफिनेशन है कि दिस इज़ अ प्रोसेस वेयर बाई ड्रग्स आर ट्रांसफर्ड फ्रॉम विद इन द बॉडी टू द एक्सटर्नल एनवायरनमेंट। मतलब यहाँ एक्सक्रीशन का मतलब है कि वॉट एवर ड्रग्स वी हैव इंजेस्टेड और वॉज एडमिनिस्टर्ड टू अस इज़ नाउ गोइंग आउट ऑफ द बॉडी, लेट इट बी इन अनचेंज्ड फॉर्म और इन इनएक्टिवेटेड फॉर्म। यहाँ पूरी तरह से बॉडी से बाहर निकाल रहे हैं। और मेजर ऑर्गन जैसे मैंने बताया था कि किडनी एक इम्पॉर्टेंट ऑर्गन है एक्सक्रीशन के लिए, नॉट ओनली फॉर वाटर सॉल्युबल ड्रग्स बट किडनी एक्सक्रीट अदर ड्रग्स, लिपिड सॉल्युबल ड्रग्स ऑल्सो विच आर मेटाबोलाइज्ड एंड कॉन्जुगेटेड टू फॉर्म वाटर सॉल्युबल इंटरमीडिएट्स। जैसे मैंने बताया भी था कि मेटाबॉलिज्म का क्या काम है। मेटाबॉलिज्म का काम है टू रेंडर नॉन पोलर मॉलिक्यूल टू पोलर सो दैट इट गेट्स एक्सक्रीटेड बाय द किडनी। तो किडनीज आर इम्पॉर्टेंट ऑर्गन फॉर एक्सक्रीशन, बट अदर देन दैट देयर आर अदर सिस्टम्स विच ऑल्सो participate in excretion of the drugs, that is biliary system, lungs and intestines. Not only that, certain drugs are excreted in the milk, saliva, sweat, etc. but they have minor importance, but I will be discussing those as well क्योंकि आपको मुझे प्रिपेयर कराना है एंट्रेंस के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से। तो मैं हर चीज़ को टच करूँगा, हर बात को बताने की कोशिश करूँगा ताकि आप सारी जानकारी आपके पास हो। As I said, the kidney is the primary organ for the removal of the most drugs, let it be lipid soluble or water soluble. Lipid soluble drugs are made water soluble by biotransformation and then they are excreted in the urine. Kidneys remove mainly those drugs or metabolites that are water soluble and are not volatile. If they are volatile, they will be excreted through lungs. The overall excretion of any drug compound or chemical through kidney occurs by several processes that are involved in excretion of that particular compound. So overall excretion of the drug from the kidney depends upon the various processes and that I will be discussing one by one. So there are several processes. For example, glomerular filtration. Glomerular filtration is the first step in the process of renal excretion, and we know that glomerular filtration is nothing but filtration of the blood in the glomeruli so that urine is formed, and there is a barrier to this filtration which is produced by the glomerular capillary which have small pores. So filtration of any compound or material from this pore depends on the size of the molecule, charge that molecule has, and the shape of that macromolecule or molecule. For example, depending upon the size in the glomerular capillary membrane, that any molecule which has size equal to the radius more than 20 angstrom will be not filtered, because there is a restriction to the filter because it is larger in size. So anything which is less than 20 angstrom in radius will definitely get filtered. Charge is the another factor. Usually charged particle face restriction during glomerular filtration than their neutral counterpart, even if they are of similar size. So neutral compounds are filtered faster than the charged particle. And also one of the reason for restricted filtration of the charged particle, especially the anions, that there is an electrostatic interaction between these anions and a fixed negative charge on the glomerular capillary membrane, a glomerular capillary wall. So there is repulsion between the two. That is why charged particles, especially anions, are not filtered well. Other than size and charge of the molecules, it is also the 3D shape of a macromolecule that also determines the glomerular filtration. For example, macromolecule which have globular 3D structure, especially the plasma proteins, they are not filtered at all. But if a macromolecule has random coil or elongated structure, that molecule will be more readily filtered at the glomerular capillaries, because that 3D shape favors the filtration. And for example of this 3D shape, as I said, random coil or elongated structure is dextrans. So dextrans easily gets filtered, but the proteins, because of their globular structure, do not easily gets filtered from at glomeruli. Also, I have discussed in past classes that it is the free drug which is available for distribution, action on the receptors, for metabolism, or for excretion. As I said, glomerular filtration occurs of certain compounds which are free, which are not bound to plasma protein, because as I said, plasma proteins are not lost in during the glomerular filtration because of their larger molecular size, so they cannot penetrate the pore. Further, their globular 3D structure. Fourth, that albumin has net negative charge, and as I said, that glomerular capillary membrane also has a fixed negative charge, so there is repulsion. So this is the reason why proteins do not appear in the urine and they are not filtered at all. So free drug which is not bound to plasma protein will be available only for filtration, and this not only bound to plasma protein, it should be free from plasma protein. Also, it should not be bound to any blood component like RBCs. So the drug has to be free from everything. Further, the inflammation of the glomeruli that may occur in different acute or chronic glomerulopathies, so that might affect the overall glomerular filtration of various drugs. Another important factor is renal plasma flow. We know the renal plasma flow, if it is reduced, the total glomerular filtration will reduce as well. So reduced renal plasma flow decreases the ultimate excretion of the drug through glomerular filtration. Other than that, as we age, other than that, the aging is also an important factor. As the age advances, the functional nephrons, total functional nephron also decrease, and that leads to the reduced functional capacity of the kidney, and overall filtration will be decreased, and that will reduce the excretion of various drugs as well. If we know that a drug is exclusively being excreted by kidney, and its clearance, which I explained in the last class, that it is a theoretical volume of the plasma which is cleared of the drug completely per unit time. So if clearance of a drug, and we know that this drug is exclusively excreted by the kidney, and clearance value comes out to be 100 to 125 or 120 milliliter per minute, that approximates GFR, then we can say this drug is being excreted by the kidney solely by glomerular filtration. So we could understand how glomerular filtration participate in process of renal excretion of the drugs. Another important process is passive tubular reabsorption, or it is also called back diffusion. Passive tubular reabsorption determines the overall urinary excretion of weak electrolytes especially, and it also determines the extent to which the drug will come back to the circulation from the tubular lumen, means back diffusion of the drug. So it will also determine the re-entry of the drug from the tubular lumen into the circulation. We know that after the filtration, as the ultrafiltrate moves forward, there is reabsorption of many essential compounds like ions and other compounds like glucose, bicarbonate, sodium, potassium, all that are absorbed, and along with that there is obligatory absorption of water also. So actually what happens, there is increase in the luminal concentration of the tubular luminal concentration of the drug also. So it naturally establishes a concentration gradient from the tubular lumen to the circulation, because the drug is being concentrated in the tubular lumen because of reabsorption of the water. So a natural tendency for development of a concentration gradient that favors movement of drug across the tubular membrane into the circulation. But this is possible only when that the compound or that drug should have sufficient lipid solubility, and ionization of the drug should also be appropriate. Why appropriate? I am mentioning this term here because ionization, an unionized moiety does not necessarily have sufficient lipid solubility to cross the membrane or any biological membrane easily. It will cross, but it may cross with difficulty. So here the lipid water partition coefficient is very important to ensure that that drug has sufficient lipid solubility along with along with its non-ionization. Then this drug will be reabsorbed from the tubular lumen. This occurs primarily in distal tubule and collecting duct. This back diffusion usually occurs in these areas of the nephron, and also it is dependent on the pH of the urine, because we know the pH determines the ionization and unionization of the drug, and it will determine the what ratio of the drug will remain in ionized form or unionized form. So this pH of the urine between 4.5 to 8 can manipulate the ionization of various drugs, and thus can affect the rate of passive back diffusion. Very important thing here is using the term appropriate, because if a drug is in unionized form but it has very low lipid water partition coefficient, then what will happen, that even if the attempts are made to increase the excretion of such drug by manipulating the pH of the tubular lumen, it will not affect the overall excretion of the drug, because by the time, because these drugs are so less lipid soluble that they will be excreted as such from the kidney, and there will be no sufficient time to get these drugs reabsorbed in the circulation. As happens, as we usually try by manipulating the pH of the urine, by using acidification or alkalization of the urine, because acidification, as I said, if we acidify the urine, the acidified drug will remain unionized, so they will be reabsorbed. So purpose of the acidification of the urine, when there is condition of overdosing with a basic drug, or there is toxicity with the basic drug, like there are many basic drugs like atropine, morphine and all that. So in that case, if we acidify the urine with ammonium chloride or vitamin C, it will lower the pH of the urine, and in that case those basic drugs will get ionized. So ionized moiety do not get reabsorbed or do not undergo back diffusion. So overall loss of the drug from the urine will increase. So this way we can decrease the or facilitate the excretion of the poisonous substance that is basic in nature. Similarly, the alkalization will improve the excretion of the acidic drugs such as salicylate or barbituric acids. Such drugs are, or penicillins, such drugs are actually acidic in nature, and alkalinization of the urine will have effect like they will be unionized in the urinary tubular lumen, and so their excretion will be facilitated. If we increase the acidification or alkalinization, suppose, and drug is in unionized form, toxicity is there with the drug which has which remains in unionized form in the tubular lumen, but its lipid solubility is very low. So trying acidification or alkalinization, depending upon the nature of the drug, let it be basic drug or acidic drug, will not affect its excretion, because the drug is already having very poor lipid solubility, so it will not be reabsorbed as such also. So these attempts like acidification or alkalinization will not facilitate the excretion of such drugs. So to manipulate excretion of such drugs, or to manipulate the excretion of the acidic or basic drug in case of toxicity, these acidification and alkalization will only act when the drug has sufficient lipid solubility, and back diffusion is an important component for reabsorption of the drug. I think this is clear to you. Now we go to another important process, that is active tubular secretion. It's not only that glomerular filtration is occurring, active tubular this passive reabsorption is occurring because of the lipid solubility or unionized availability of unionized moiety. This active tubular secretion is also important for removing drug from the plasma or sending drug from the plasma to the tubular lumen. We have in human body two important independent transporter system that are involved in. These are active transport systems, and they operate in proximal convoluted tubule cells. So we have one for anions, that is organic anion transporter, and organic cation transporters. So we have two different transporters, one for cations, another for anion. Because these are the transporter transporter system, so it has a maximum capacity up to which it can handle a particular concentration of drug or a substance for exchange across the tubular lumen. So if a drug or other endogenous compound, or if two drugs compete for the same transporter compete with each other for the same transporter, what will happen? Or if a drug compete with the endogenous compounds, the concentration of the drug in the plasma will increase because the overall active tubular secretion will decrease, and this process is saturable. That is why it is occurring, because more substrate is available for the transporter to handle. So transporter has a capacity which may be exceeded if there is a competition. This as I said, these transporters are very important in excretion of anions and cations, because they have very high affinity for binding with plasma proteins, and we know that if they are bound with plasma protein, their filtration is difficult. And very good or desirable property of this active tubular secretion is that protein bound drug is fully available for this active tubular secretion, because this process is so efficient and fast that it may release the drug from the proteins and can send the entire drug. If the Tmax is not reached, the entire drug can be secreted in the tubular lumen. So the full protein bound drug is available for active tubular secretion. And protein bonding we know as is a reversible phenomenon. The moment the free drug is removed from the plasma and thrown into the tubular lumen, more and more drug get released from the protein bound state, and ultimately being very efficient this process, this protein binding is not a barrier to the active tubular secretion of the drug. This active tubular secretion also is affected by the extreme of ages. Just like in elderly, the functional capacity of this system decreases, and in neonate it takes time to develop. So both these group of individuals will have poor tubular secretion of the drug and may have higher concentration of drugs which are substrate for active tubular secretion, and which accounts for majority of its excretion in the urine. If a drug is largely excreted by kidney and its T half is less than 2 hours, then we can very confidently say that some part of this drug is being excreted by mechanism of active tubular secretion. Further, a guide to find out whether active tubular secretion is occurring or not, when there is when there is a clearance value for a drug which is higher than the glomerular filtration rate, and when we know that this drug is exclusively being excreted by the kidney and clearance value is more than GFR, then we can very well say that active tubular secretion is also contributing to the loss of the drug in the urine. Another process which is also operating in the renal tissues is active tubular reabsorption. This primarily operates in proximal tubules. What happens whenever the substances, endogenous substances and drug is filtered and at glomerular capillary, the most of the substances that are filtered like glucose and many ions and all that are reabsorbed completely. But some of the drugs are also reabsorbed through active tubular reabsorption process. Especially this reabsorption process, as I said, is important for endogenous substances. For example, as amino acid and glucose ions, these are sodium or potassium, absorbed to the tune of almost 99 to 100%. But as I said, that some drugs may also be actively reabsorbed by a transport mechanism, active transport mechanism. This active transport mechanism is located on the luminal side of the brush luminal side of the tubular cell, and if such reabsorption is blocked, we can enhance the excretion of certain drugs and also this certain endogenous some substance. We have also seen for certain drugs including some natural compounds a bidirectional active transport. Means some of the drugs are probenecid is reabsorbed and also actively reabsorbed and also actively secreted in the tubular lumen or actively reabsorbed from the tubular lumen. Uric acid is a compound, endogenous compound, which is higher concentration of the uric acid in the blood is called hyperuricemia and is associated with condition called gout or gouty arthritis. So this uric acid, whatever is filtered at glomeruli is completely reabsorbed by this active tubular reabsorption, and whatever uric acid is appearing in the urine is what is secreted by the active tubular secretion. So this bidirectional active transport may also occur in the kidney. How we can exploit these transporter mechanism operating in the kidney? We have certain drugs which actually exploit these active transport mechanism, and most of the drugs act by inhibiting or reducing these active transport rather than enhancing them. Probenecid and sulfenpyrazone, that is very less frequently used now in gout. Probenecid is a uricosuric drug, means a drug which increases the excretion of uric acid in the urine. That is why it is called uricosuric. The probenecid inhibit active urate reabsorption. So by inhibiting the active reabsorption transporter, this probenecid inhibit the active urate reabsorption, so more and more uric acid appears in the urine and are lost in the urine, thereby it controls the hyperuricemia. In contrast, pyrazinamide is a drug which is used in tuberculosis. This pyrazinamide blocks the active tubular secretion of the uric acid. So what happens? As I said, the uric acid which actually appears in the urine is the secreted uric acid secreted by tubules. So if this pyrazinamide blocks the active tubular secretion, what will happen? The urate which is filtered at glomeruli will be reabsorbed, and whatever excretion was occurring through tubular secretion, that will also be stopped. So there will be piling of the concentration of the uric acid in the blood, and it may lead to hyperuricemia, and an attack of gout may be precipitated. That is why this pyrazinamide has a side effect called hyperuricemia. It may increase the serum uric acid level. Not only this, a drug may have dual action, that at one concentration it will act in a different direction, and at a different concentration will act in another direction. For example, salicylate, that salicylic acid, if given at low doses, they inhibit the active secretion of the uric acid. So what will happen? Because active secretion is responsible for excretion of the uric acid in the urine, so at low doses they retain uric acid in the blood, so they can cause hyperuricemia. But at high concentration of salicylate, that salicylate inhibit the active reabsorption at the higher dose. So what will happen? The more and more uric acid will be lost in the urine, and thereby it will decrease hyperuricemia. So we could see that salicylate, being a single drug, have two different action at two different dose ranges. So this is also possible in urinary excretion of certain compound. What are the clinical implications of this urinary excretion? Because kidneys are the most important organ for excretion of most of the clinically used drug. So rate of urinary drug excretion will depend or should depend on certain factors, pharmacokinetic factors, for example, drugs volume of distribution. If volume of distribution increases, what will happen? The plasma concentration will fall and less drug will be presented to the kidney. So the excretion will decrease. Degree of protein binding. If protein binding is decreased, there will be more free drug, and if more free drug is there, that is always available for filtration. So it will, in theory, will promote the excretion of the drug if the glomerular filtration is largely contributing to the loss of such drug in the urine. Other than that, many renal factors are also important for deciding overall excretion of the drug. That is, one is glomerular filtration rate. As I said earlier also, that if renal plasma flow is reduced, then glomerular filtration rate will also reduce. And glomerular filtration rate, not only because of that, it may reduce because of the many things we have discussed, that if there is glomerulonephritis or chronic or acute glomerulopathy, so any reason which reduces glomerular filtration will reduce the urinary excretion of the drug. Tubular fluid pH, it will actually manipulate the excretion of certain compounds. It may enhance or may decrease the tubular or urinary excretion of the drugs. As I already said, the purpose or intention would decide that we want to promote the excretion of the drug or we want to promote the reabsorption of the drug. But usually the purpose is always for manipulating the tubular pH, fluid pH, is to enhance the excretion of the drug in case of toxicity. Extent of back diffusion. If a drug is largely gets back to the circulation by penetrating through tubular lumen because of its lipid solubility or because of this back diffusion, if this is occurring at a very large scale, then the overall excretion of the drug will in the urine will decrease. Likewise, extent of active secretion, if it is more, and then the urinary excretion of the drug will increase. Okay, we know that secretion is occurring, but at the same time, if there is active reabsorption is also occurring, and if it plays a major role, then the overall excretion of the drug will reduce. Otherwise, if a drug is being reabsorbed actively, and if somehow we can inhibit this process, we may increase the overall removal of the drug through the urinary route. So ultimately, the overall excretion of the urinary excretion of any compound will depend upon the various processes involved. For example, a drug filtered and secreted is always available for loss through the urine unless until it is reabsorbed. So that is why the final excretion value will depend upon the amount of drug filtered plus amount of drug secreted minus amount of drug reabsorbed, taken back into the circulation. So this will determine the overall urinary excretion of the drug, can be calculated using this simple formula. If the functional status of the renal tissue or kidney is reduced or deteriorates because of certain pathological condition, it will lead to the lower excretion or reduced excretion of drugs, and that may in turn lead to increase in duration of activity of a particular drug or may intensify its action by increasing the peak concentration of the drug. So status of renal function will decide that how long the duration of action will increase or the intensity of action will be affected. So whenever there is impaired renal function observed or reported in a patient, we have to take corrective action, that we should whether adjust the doses or not. The dosage adjustment are usually done by either reducing the maintenance dose, whatever maintenance dose we are giving at a fixed interval, we can reduce the quantity of dose in proportion to the deterioration in the renal function, or we can keep the dose same but increase the dosage interval, or many times it may be necessary to reduce the dose as well as increase the dosing interval, and that will all depend upon whether this is required or not, will depend upon the degree of renal dysfunction. Suppose degree of renal dysfunction is mild, and clinically it has been proven that even if there is little bit increase in the concentration, plasma concentration of the drug, that is not going to affect the overall action of the drug clinically or in a clinically significant way, then adjustment may not be required. So it will depend upon the degree of renal dysfunction. If it is renal dysfunction is severely disrupted, then we have to adjust the doses accordingly. One more important thing is that what percentage of drug is being cleared by the kidney. Suppose a drug is a substrate for other tissues as well, or it depends for its excretion on liver and other organ also, then the adjustment may be a little bit different. It may not be as great as required for drugs which are exclusively excreted by the kidney. So it is always preferred to have a drug which have multiple route of excretion or elimination. So that is always a quality of a good drug, property of a good drug, so that in case suppose drug is half cleared by kidney and half cleared by the liver, so even if one of the organ function is impaired, the another organ will take over and can possibly keep the drug concentration in well within the safe ranges. Everything is fine, but we need to see the potential for drug toxicity. If drug is very safe, and even if renal function is deteriorated and concentrations are high, but despite that drug is so safe that it does not cause any undesirable side effects, then there is no need for dose adjustment. It all depends upon the clinical picture and clinical outcome of this derangement in the function. If drug has potential for toxicity, we definitely need to adjust the doses, and that can be done by either manipulating the maintenance dose or manipulating the dosage interval, or both can be manipulated. But if drug is very safe and does not cause any undesirable effect, then there would be no need for adjustment, at least theoretically. So we have read about I discussed about the urinary excretion, which is the most important route of drug excretion in the body, and the various processes right from glomerular filtration to active tubular secretion, active tubular reabsorption, passive diffusion. All such phenomena are operating in different part of the tubules and deciding the overall excretion of the drug through the urinary route, and how different factors can affect urinary excretion, that we already discussed in previous slides. Now the second important organ for excretion of the drug is biliary excretion, that is means excretion of the drugs in bile. Most drugs, majority of the drugs can readily reach hepatic extracellular fluid from the plasma. This is possible just because the hepatic sinusoids, the endothelial lining of the hepatic sinusoids are having large pores. So drug molecules even with large molecular weight can easily cross through those pores and can appear in hepatic extracellular fluid. From there, extracellular fluid to entry in the hepatocyte depends upon the active transport and the diffusion. The active transport is important for drugs which are water soluble, and diffusion is more important for drugs which are highly lipid soluble. They can cross the hepatocyte as such because of their inherent lipid solubility. But transport mechanism is required for drug to enter the hepatocyte and cross the membrane of the cell membrane of the hepatocyte. Active transport mechanism is there. However, up to this point everything is fine, but entry into the bile is much more selective. That is very highly selective process, and based on this selectivity there are three categories of compound have been classified, that group A, group B and group C. Group A compounds are those which have biliary concentration of that compound or drug similar to plasma concentration, means this ratio is 1. Another group is group B, where the concentration of the biliary concentration of the compounds such as bile salts, bilirubin, glucuronide and certain drugs like procainamide is much higher than the concentration in the plasma, means they are actively concentrated in the bile by certain this active transport system, and this ratio may vary from 10 to 1000 times in comparison to plasma. The group C compounds are those which have biliary, where the biliary concentration of the compounds are less than the plasma, means the ratio is less than 1. So this entry from the hepatocyte into the bile, as I said, is more selective, and the diffusion here plays a little role. It contributes only very minimally for movement of the drug from hepatocyte into the bile. Most important phenomena here are the active transport system. There are three different active transport system, independent active transport system. Two of them are similar, which are active in kidney, but not exactly same, but there are some overlapping activities there, one for the anion and another for the cation, and one for the unionized molecule, especially like cardiac glycoside, which is where the cardiac glycosides are the substrate for that particular active transport system. So depending upon the biliary excretion may sometimes lead to the majority of the fraction of the drug excreted in the bile, and it may range from 5 to 95% of the administered dose. Many a time this biliary excretion is important for the removal of the many heavy metals, especially the iron, arsenic and lead. And very good desirable property here also is that protein bound drug is also completely available for biliary active transport. So as we saw in active secretion, renal tubular secretion, that protein bound drug is not a deterrence to the excretion of the drug through kidney. So same here in biliary active transport, protein bound binding is not a not a detrimental factor. It will not affect or prohibit the excretion of the drug in bile. The drugs, like in kidney, many of the drugs which are excreted unchanged by the kidney because they are not metabolized. Many of the drugs are there. Likewise, the liver does not always metabolize a drug. It can also actively secrete a drug, unchanged drug, in the bile. But if this actively secreted drug is charged molecules, so that will go along with the bile in the intestine, and because of their charge moiety, and moreover many a time they are the glucuronide conjugate or conjugate metabolites after the conjugation reactions, so they are charged enough so that their back diffusion in the intestinal lumen, intestinal wall cannot occur, because this conjugation reaction not only increases the molecular weight of this metabolite, but also they introduce a highly anionic center in the drug molecules, that metabolite. So it becomes difficult for such metabolites to get reabsorbed, and they will not recycle, and most of the drugs, such drugs which are excreted in bile in charged form will be removed from the body by the way of feces. So fecal excretion becomes important for such drugs. But many drugs that are actively secreted in bile is reabsorbed, because as the bile salts, many of the bile salts secreted in the bile are reabsorbed by, there is a transport mechanism for the bile acid transport. So many of the drugs are also secreted in the bile are reabsorbed because of their sufficient lipid solubility. So such drugs undergo metabolism or renally excreted, because every time it is excreted by the bile in the excreted by the liver in the bile, and it is again reabsorbed from the intestine and comes back to the liver. So ultimately these drugs are metabolized, and such metabolic products are excreted by kidney. As I said, that conjugation reaction also important for renal excretion of the drug, because that makes that lipid soluble compound water soluble also. So finally this enterohepatic recycling will stop, and it stops when this drug after multiple cycle get metabolized and excreted by other route. So this phenomenon of repeated secretion and reabsorption called enterohepatic recycling, that accounts for longer stay of certain drugs in the plasma, and such drugs may have very long duration of action. Usually such drugs which undergo enterohepatic recycling is indomethacin, estrogen, and your metronidazole. These are the drugs which undergo, morphine even, that undergo enterohepatic recycling. Many a time if toxicity occurs with such drugs, we can interrupt enterohepatic recycling by using oral administration of activated charcoal that adsorb this drug, and or using anionic exchange resins. The example of such a resin is cholestyramine, which is used in reducing the cholesterol absorption. So this cholestyramine and activated charcoal may interrupt this enterohepatic recycling, and thus drug remains trapped in GIT, and that will be finally excreted through fecal route. We know that conjugation also enhances biliary excretion. They are excreted in the bile as glucuronide, जैसे bilirubin glucuronide is excreted. Similarly, this conjugation product or the compound which are conjugated, or metabolite that are conjugated and excreted in the bile, they will not be reabsorbed from the GIT unless hydrolyzed. Why? Because their size is more and they are water soluble, so they will not cross the intestinal membrane. But if they are hydrolyzed by certain enzymes present in intestinal bacteria like glucuronidase, then there may be reabsorption of certain drugs from the, if such conjugates are hydrolyzed. Moreover, liver disease impair metabolism and biliary secretion. So it can lead to accumulation of certain drugs like probenecid, digoxin, and we should also know that these two mechanisms are interrelated, like metabolism and biliary secretion, because conjugation enhance the biliary excretion, and conjugation occurs when liver metabolize, phase 1 reaction take place, liver metabolize certain drugs, and which becomes substrate for conjugation reaction, because they expose certain functional group, this phase 1 reaction, and certain these atoms are required like O, N, S, nitrogen or sulfur atom for these endogenous substances to conjugate with drug metabolite. So whenever there is liver diseases, there will definitely be impaired metabolism and biliary secretion of the drug which are excreted by biliary route. So such drug will accumulate in the plasma and may lead to toxicity as well. Biliary excretion is reduced in extreme of ages, so like in children, so it can lead to at both the continuum of the ages, the biliary excretion is reduced. So there is more likely chances that drugs which are substrate for this biliary excretion or excreted through bile will have less or reduced excretion and may cause toxicity in elderly as well as in the infant age group. Not only there will be decrease in biliary excretion because of the liver disease and all that, there may be increased excretory function also may occur, because it has been seen that chronic administration of an enzyme inducer, that is phenobarbital or spironolactone, which is a potassium sparing diuretics, may increase the overall flow of the bile, means increased production of the bile may occur, and that may lead to the increased excretion of the drugs which are excreted by the bile, and overall concentration of such drugs may fall in the plasma and may affect the therapeutic efficacy of such drugs. Interaction means whenever there is competition between two entity for a particular thing, there will always be derangement in the balance which is there in the system. For example, administration of one drug may influence the rate of biliary excretion of other drug. As I said, whenever there is a competition for a particular thing by two entity, there will always be an imbalance. For example, if any drug that affects the hepatic flow will definitely reduce the biliary excretion of the other drug, because blood flow is necessary for bile to form. Uptake into hepatocyte. Suppose one drug affect the uptake of the drug into the hepatocyte, interrupt with the uptake of the drug in the hepatocyte. So what will happen? The drug which is supposed to be uptaken by the hepatocyte get reduced, and thereby its biliary excretion will be reduced. Rate of biotransformation, as in case of liver diseases, as I said, if one drug, that was the different case, that was the case of the diseases liver dysfunction, but if one drug affect the biotransformation of other drug, means inhibitor, an enzyme inhibitor, so what will happen? The metabolite will not form, and as you know, the metabolites are actually made water soluble by conjugation reaction. So if conjugation usually facilitate the biliary excretion of the drug, if the metabolites will not form because of the inhibition of the biotransformation by another drug, that will lead to final reduction in the overall amount of the another drug in the bile. Not only that, if transport into the bile is affected by a drug of one drug by the other, or the rate of bile formation is altered, that will also have impact on the overall excretion of the drug in the bile. Another important and interesting fact is that intestinal flora may be affected by antibiotics. Intestinal bacteria contain enzymes like sulfatase and glucuronidase. If a patient is on antibiotic therapy, that will reduce the intestinal bacterial load, and thereby can and thus these bacteria, there will be less of these enzymes, so that the conjugates which were delivered to the intestine will not be deconjugated, and they will be excreted in the feces. So the enterohepatic recirculation of such drugs which were substrate for, or which were candidate for reabsorption through intestinal membrane, because they were deconjugated by the enzymes released by the intestinal bacteria. So enterohepatic recirculation of such drug will decrease, and that will lead to the loss of the enhanced loss of such drugs in the feces. So we have up till this point have completed the renal excretion, which is the most important way of excreting drug out of the body, and the biliary excretion, second in importance, followed by pulmonary excretion. We know that pulmonary excretion also important for certain drugs, especially the gases and the volatile material. If volatile material is given to a person irrespective of the route of administration, that has potential to be excreted by through lungs, and gases are obvious, they are always excreted through in expired air and through lungs. So it is very much expected, if volatile material or gases are given by the inhalation, so the same process will lead to the excretion. By same route, the excretion of these material will occur, like gases and volatile material. There is no special transport system available for pulmonary excretion. It is just by simple diffusion of the drug, means this volatile material or gases, from the blood into the alveoli through the alveolar membrane. So simple diffusion is the major mechanism involved here. However, the rate of loss of such or excretion of such gases and volatile material will depend upon the tissue and blood solubility. The agent which have high blood and tissue solubility will be slow to be excreted by pulmonary route, because their excretion will be slow. And loss of gases also depends on rate of respiration. Rate of respiration will increase the excretion of the gases which are actually poorly soluble in the blood. Because what happens, whatever blood is coming to the lungs and drug is very poorly soluble, that will immediately cross the alveolar membrane from blood to the alveoli, and it will be exhaled outside. So here, if you increase the rate of respiration, the loss of such poorly soluble drug in the poorly soluble gases in the blood will increase. But in case of highly soluble gases in the blood, their excretion will increase when we increase the cardiac output, because more and more blood should reach to the pulmonary circulation, and thereby, because only a small fraction is removed every time, so if more blood is delivered to the pulmonary circuit, then more gas will be lost. So in case of highly soluble drug, highly soluble gases which are highly soluble in blood, increasing cardiac output will enhance their excretion. It has been seen that if you double the cardiac output, the excretion will also become double. Pulmonary blood flow, as I said, is important for excretion of these gases. Increased pulmonary blood flow will increase the loss of the gases, increased loss of the gases which are poorly soluble. Solubility in the blood is an important factor, as I said, that poorly soluble gases actually is excreted faster, and ethanol, which is highly soluble in the blood, its excretion is very slow in the through lungs in the exhaled air. But there are other routes, liver route, through which ethanol is in majority is excreted through the metabolized in the liver and excreted by the kidney. So highly soluble agents, either the volatile material or gases, will have poor excretion through the lungs, but increasing the cardiac output will definitely increase the excretion of the poorly soluble gases through the lungs in the exhaled air or expired air. I mentioned earlier also that there are certain other routes through which a drug can be excreted, and it can be excreted through milk, and it can be excreted through saliva and sweat. We know that milk's pH is more acidic in comparison to plasma. So what will happen? The drugs which gets accumulated if the drug is basic, what will happen if it is partitioned secreted in the milk? Then it will get ionized because of the acidic pH, and it will remain here. So basic drugs will be more concentrated or accumulated in the milk than the acidic drug. The acidic drug concentration in the milk will be usually lesser than the plasma, but the concentration of the basic drug will be more than the plasma. The concentration in milk of various drugs will depend on various factors. For example, very important is amount of drug in the maternal blood. If there is high plasma concentration in the maternal blood, then the concentration in the milk will also be higher. But in contrast, if the drug which is present in the maternal plasma is highly plasma protein bound, then there is less likely chances that the concentration of the drug in the milk will approach plasma. It will be much lesser than that. If drug is highly lipid soluble, the drug will enter the milk and get bound to the fat in the fat portion of the milk. And the low molecular weight unionized water soluble drugs are accumulated in the milk by an active transport system, and also it will depend, the concentration of a particular drug in the milk will also depend upon the extent of its active secretion, how much that particular drug in question is secreted from plasma into the milk. If it is significant, that the concentration of such drug will be very high in the milk. Ethanol, which has it is a non-electrolyte, so it distributes evenly in total body water. So in all fluid compartment, milk is also a fluid compartment, so its concentration will always remain equal to plasma. That is in 1:1 ratio. But the drug tetracycline, which has tendency to chelate with calcium ion, and since calcium is rich in plasma is rich in calcium, so this tetracycline will bind with calcium, and the concentration of the tetracycline in the mother's milk will be much higher than in the maternal plasma. That is why during pregnancy and during lactation, the administration of tetracycline to such mothers is not recommended, because it may badly affect the nursing infant. Blood flow to the breast will also decide the quantity of the drug in the milk, because the blood flow will decide the amount of the milk synthesized in the breast, and blood flow also keeps changing during the time of the day to the breast. So how much blood flow is to the breast will determine also the concentration of the drug at that point of time in the milk. Alteration in breast milk pH, as I said, if pH is affected, that will also affect the type of drug and the quantity of drug being accumulated in the milk. So since nursing of an infant is important, because the neonates and infants up to 6 months of age, they are dependent on the mother's milk exclusively. So feeding is an important activity. So if such a scenario arises, if mother is taking certain drugs which are known to accumulate in milk, then there is high likely chances that the infant will also be exposed to such drugs, and that may lead to undesirable side effects in the child. So how we can take care of such issues and avoid such complication to the nursing infant? Usually we should avoid feeding shortly after the maternal drug dosing, because at this point of time the concentration of the drug in the milk is the highest. So avoid giving feed shortly after the dosing. It is usually give the feed to the baby and then immediately dose the mother. This is the best strategy to reduce the exposure of the infant to the drug. Older infant gets less affected than a suckling neonate. The reason being, as the age increases, the baby develops certain metabolic capabilities, thereby, and excretion of the drug also is improved. So that is why the suckling neonates are more likely to be affected than the older infants, because the metabolic and excretion processes are more matured than the suckling neonate. The effect of the drug or on the baby will also depend upon the milk volume consumed. The more the milk volume is consumed, more the drug is delivered to the baby. So this has direct relationship. So if baby is entirely dependent on the mother's milk, then the more and more drug will be reaching to the baby. Longer feed time. If the feeding time is long, what happens? That increases the exposure of the usually the lipid drug, because with longer feeding time the fat content of the milk increases. So as we know, this lipid drug get partitioned to the fat component of the milk. So child is affected more when the feeding time is longer. Other way of avoiding toxicity to the nursing baby is discourage feeding if toxicity is known, that we know that drug is definitely toxic to the child. Then we can discourage feeding and the baby can be nursed with, or baby can thrive on formula feed. And if it is essential to treat the mother, and if possible give short intermittent dosing, that will definitely reduce the exposure of the child or baby to the drug mother is taking. So these are all strategies or techniques how we can avoid exposure of the baby or decrease exposure of the baby to the drug mother is taking, and which is known to harm the baby in definite sense. Excretion in sweat and saliva is of only minor importance, because very few drugs, if they are at all excreted in sweat and saliva, and for both the routes the mechanism of excretion remains the same, and it is the diffusion of unionized, that is, I said unionized means lipid soluble, but lipid solubility, how much lipid soluble it will be, will depend more on lipid water partition coefficient. Higher this coefficient, higher is the lipid solubility, but it is usually presumed this unionized moiety has lipid solubility. So this occurs by diffusion of the lipid soluble moiety drug or lipid soluble drug across the epithelial cells of the glands, like sweat glands and salivary glands. Polar drugs will also be excreted through sweat or saliva, but their filtration, that is through filtration from the junction between the epithelial linings, pores between the epithelial linings of the glands, and that will be proportional to their molecular weight. Lower the molecular weight, more will be the filtration, and more of such polar drugs will be excreted in the sweat and saliva. So because of the excretion in the sweat and saliva, many a times an individual may experience dermatitis or other skin related reaction despite administration of the drug by systemic routes without application on the skin. So this is the reason why, because certain drugs may be excreted in sweat and that can reach to the skin, and if has irritating property or allergenic property, that can definitely can cause dermatitis or other skin reactions. And drugs which actually gets secreted or excreted in saliva will such patient will definitely complain of change in taste. So this is because, and this gives an indirect idea or that the drug is also being excreted in saliva, but how much it will affect the plasma concentration will depend upon the habit of a person. Some people have habit of continuous spitting, but some have tendency to ingest the saliva produced. So total saliva produced in a day is sufficient, a very significant amount, maybe in liters, 1 or 1.5 liter as far as I know. So such drugs may reach to the intestine and may even reabsorb through the intestinal route. So there may be some changes in the that might affect if theoretically the plasma concentration of such drugs which are excreted in saliva to a significant degree or significant extent. So this was all about excretion through different route. As we saw that the major routes of excretions were the kidney, the biliary excretion, the excretion through the lungs, and excretion in the milk, and the sweat and saliva. But we should always focus more on this biliary and urinary excretion, because they are the two important pathway of excretion of the drug. And the pulmonary excretion becomes important in case of general anesthetic agent, where we use certain volatile liquids like halothane and this various gases like enfluorine, isoflurane. These drugs are used as general anesthetic drugs, or nitrous oxide. So that becomes important in that case in anesthetic practice. So total information provided in today's lecture, I presume that is sufficient, and it covers almost all area of excretion. If something which I left may be picked up in or covered up during any question answer session or something like that. So hope that you have understood excretion and different routes of excretion in detail. So this is for today, and before I leave, I would request you, those who have liked my lecture and are enjoying these pharmacology lectures, to download Unacademy Learning app and install it on your handheld device, like on tablet or your mobile, which can be an Android based or iOS based. And select, if you are a NEET as PG aspirant, select this course NEET PG, and followed by the selection of this NEET this plus course, because this you have free course available on the YouTube and special classes on the Unacademy platform. But this plus, you have exclusive content, and this is available for subscription that can be bought after paying a certain amount. And if you are really liking and interested in learning pharmacology from me and finding this my teaching as useful for you, so kindly subscribe to this NEET PG Plus, and you can buy a subscription for 12 months and 24 months. It is always better by paying little extra. You can get access for 24 months, and don't forget to apply my code, this TRPRAMOD. If you apply this code, you will get instant 10% discount on the total fee which is mentioned here for 12 and 24 months. So apply. I would request you please apply and buy or subscribe to this course. And please subscribe, and if subscribe to this NEET PG channel, and don't forget to hit this bell icon, because it will give you the all latest notification about the NEET PG courses and the classes. And you like this channel, share it as much as possible with your near and dear. And but don't forget, whenever you are buying subscription, to apply this code, because this will give you 10% instant discount. So if you are buying a subscription, always use this code. And thanks for your attention, and this is all for today. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.